The components of the breath. Earlier in the book, we touched on the 4 parts of the breath cycle: the inhalation, inner retention, exhalation, and outer retention, in order to discuss how they affect the energies of the body. Here, we are going to expand upon this concept and add in the Sanskrit term for each part. Learning and understanding these terms can be valuable, as Sanskrit gives us insight into the subtler qualities that can be associated with breathing. I also find it much easier to use Sanskrit words to instruct the different types of breath retention because Sanskrit has words that directly describe these components, whereas English does not. Puraka, inhalation. Puraka is the Sanskrit word for the inhalation. When translated literally, puraka means satisfying, filling, or fulfilling. You'll often hear or see it as puraka pranayama, which gives the intention of the inhalation. To breathe is not just about filling up our lungs, but it is a gratifying act that brings enjoyment. When we inhale with this sentiment, we can immediately feel a positive change in mood, and the effects ripple through our energetic body. Puraka can also refer to the receiving and gathering of prana and spiritual knowledge, as previously discussed. The breath is more than just the air we breathe. Rechaka, exhalation. Rechaka, or rekaka, in Sanskrit, the C is always pronounced ch, means to release the breath or exhale. It invokes an emptying, emitting, or purging. Rechaka is the basis of many philosophies and provides the energetic movement to support many of these ideas. Yoga teaches us that having attachments always leads to suffering. To be attached to something or someone means that we are looking for happiness in that thing or person staying the same. Because change is the universal truth, anything we are attached to will eventually change, and that change will bring about separation, which is the root of suffering. Instead, we let go of the things we were never able to hold on to in the first place. By letting go, we are able to see the connection that is fluid with change, just as the ocean allows the waves to move freely. The waves change, but their connection to the ocean remains. A way to understand the difference between attachment and connection is to remember someone you've lost. When you lose someone you love, you immediately feel the pain that is caused by separation. The pain associated with the attachment fades over time. After the pain is gone, all that is left is the love and the connection, which never fades. Buddhism emphasizes emptiness, or sunyata, as an essential part of liberation and enlightenment. Only through emptiness can we realize spaciousness and begin to see underlying connection that exists beyond our attachments. Rechaka has a beautiful way of showing us how to release the things that aren't serving us. We symbolically and energetically exhale to free ourselves of those things we no longer want to hold on to. Purchaka and Rechaka interact in a beautiful dance where filling needs emptying and emptying needs filling. This simple interaction teaches us some of the most valuable lessons of the Buddha on freeing ourselves from suffering. We don't try to get rid of the things we have but don't want, and we don't try to obtain the things we want but don't have. The inhalation will never last, and we can never truly get rid of the exhalation. Instead, we see things as they are, existing in the continuously changing, interconnected reality. Kumbhaka, retention. Kumbhaka translates as pot or container, and it refers to any practice where we hold the breath and retain the prana. Kumbhaka is considered the most important of the pranayama practices, and it is a way to live longer. The ancient yogis developed many techniques and philosophies from being in deep communion with nature. The asana, or postural practice of yoga, has many poses named after animals that yogis observe in nature. They noticed the animals that breathed fast died much faster than the slow-breathing animals. The slower an animal breathed, the longer its lifespan was. For example, the longest living mammal on record, the bonehead whale, has an average lifespan of 200 years. The bonehead whale breathes only once or twice per minute while resting at the surface, and 4 to 6 times per minute before preparing for a dive. Then it can hold its breath for up to an hour. In contrast, a mouse breathes up to 230 times per minute and lives only 1 to 3 years. The giant tortoise, the longest living land animal breathing 4 to 6 times per minute, is referenced in the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna, the Hindu god in the Bhagavad Gita, states that by practicing kumbhaka, yogis could increase their lifespan by many years. The ancient yogis believed that we are limited to a certain number of breaths in a lifetime, and if we learn how to breathe slower, we can live longer. As we develop an understanding of the physiology of breathing and the positive effects that come from building up and retaining carbon dioxide, it is easy to see the truth in what the yogis predicted thousands of years ago. Breathing slower and holding our breath improves our health and our chances of living a long, healthy life. The 3 major types of kumbhaka are Antara kumbhaka, Baya kumbhaka, and Kevala kumbhaka. Antara kumbhaka, inner retention. Antara kumbhaka means full container, and it is the breath retention after inhalation when our lungs are completely full at vital capacity. Retaining the breath between the full point and the empty point is just referred to as kumbhaka. Antara kumbhaka is the easiest of the breath retentions because we are holding the most air for cellular respiration. There are 2 ways to retain the breath on the inhalation. The first is to constrict the glottis and close the vocal cords, which creates a seal and doesn't allow air to escape. We can then relax our diaphragm and the accessory muscles of inhalation. This technique makes it easier to hold the breath for longer periods because it requires less effort. When we release the hold, we hear a little aspirated sound. The second and probably less familiar way is to hold Antara kumbhaka while leaving the trachea open without constricting the glottis. This retention is done using the diaphragm and accessory muscles to expand the chest and hold the expansion with muscular control. This technique is great for strengthening the diaphragm and accessory muscles. However, it takes more effort and holding the breath is much harder. The exhalation should feel the same as a normal exhalation during regular breathing with no aspirated sound. Baya kumbhaka, outer retention. Baya kumbhaka translates as external breath retention, and it refers to holding the breath after completing an exhalation. Physiologically, it refers to the bottom limit of our expiratory reserve volume. After a complete exhale, we have around 12,000 milliliters of air left inside our lungs, which means 2 things. There is less oxygen available, so blood oxygen saturation decreases faster, and the ratio of carbon dioxide to oxygen quickly increases. Baya kumbhaka is the most difficult breath retention because it requires holding the breath with only residual reserves for respiratory exchange. But because of the decreased volume in our lungs, our carbon dioxide levels increase much faster, and we experience the effects of hypoxia, low oxygen, and hypercapnia, high carbon dioxide, more quickly and more intensely. Baya kumbhaka is generally very difficult for someone who has never practiced it. Holding the breath with empty lungs can give us the feeling of suffocating, evoke panic, and stimulate the fight or flight response. But with training and practice, we can use this breath practice to move into deeper states of relaxation and meditation, especially when we are able to incorporate Baya kumbhaka with Puraka, Rechaka, and Antara kumbhaka. Kevala kumbhaka, suspension of breathing. Kevala kumbhaka is the suspension of breathing. Kevala means whole, complete, or by itself. Kevala kumbhaka is said to occur when we are so deep in meditation that the Puraka and the Rechaka suddenly stop. Then we can maintain the breath hold indefinitely and obtain the state of Samadhi, which is the highest level of Patanjali's eightfold path of yoga, the state of bliss and enlightenment. The practice of Kevala kumbhaka is not the absolute cessation of breathing, but the lengthening of the breath and reduction of how much air we are breathing until it seems as though there is no breath at all. Kevala kumbhaka is the highest form of breath retention and breathing less. There are 2 primary ways to practice it. Lengthening the 4 parts of the breath. By lengthening the inhalation, holding the in-breath, exhaling, and holding the out-breath, all for as long as we can, we extend one breath cycle to its maximum length. But most people can't do this for more than 1 cycle, so instead, we find the maximum length of each part of the breath that we can maintain for the longest time. The second way is by reducing tidal volume. If the normal tidal volume is around 500 milliliters, then reducing it to 150 or 250 milliliters while maintaining the same respiration rate will give us the benefits of Kevala Kumbhaka and breathing less. I find the second way of practicing Kevala Kumbhaka much more challenging and much harder to maintain.